I've wanted to be a writer for a long time. For most of my life, my focus was on video game development, but a few years ago, I tried writing a fantasy book from start to finish. In this video, I want to tell you the story of how I published my first ever book without any experience or formal training, and how, against all odds, and to my surprise, everyone who read it absolutely loved it. Now, spoiler alert, this story ends with the Kickstarter campaign that I'm preparing for the updated deluxe hardcover edition of this very book. So if you're interested in a heist-style thriller about slaying a tyrannical dragon in a world where dragons rule, check out the Kickstarter and click the notify me on launch button. But hang on, let's backtrack. It's taken a really long time to get here. It all started when in 2017, after messing around for years trying to write a bunch of unfinished fantasy stories, I decided no more meandering, I'm just going to sit down and get a book done. I think it started out as a short story but then grew into a novella. It just sort of happened. Inspiration hit me and I started writing. I knew exactly what I wanted it to be. There's getting the team together, making the plan, and like every good heist story, everything goes wrong. I didn't even do much outlining. I shared it with my friends, one of which is a literal philosophy professor, and to my surprise, he absolutely loved it. And this guy has read a lot of books. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, Andre, this is like a good story. No, it was like, wow, let's talk about it for hours. So I thought, okay, I might actually be onto something here. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about publishing. I researched the process a bit, but all I really ended up learning was that there was a service on Amazon called KDP that lets you self-publish books, and you could run ads to see if people would want to buy them. I didn't know anything else. And as I was about to learn the hard way, it turned out that just publishing your book on KDP basically amounts to not publishing your book at all. But ignorant of the truth and full of excitement, I uploaded my book, bought a cover, set it all up, got it ready, launched it, and nothing. My friends and family generously bought the book, and I got a few awesome reviews from people who really seemed to enjoy it, but other than that, it didn't really get any traction. The ads didn't really work, the word didn't spread a whole lot, it just kind of sat there. And so I thought, that was it. Writing books is just not in any way lucrative. I figured the only way to really make it must be through a publisher who can distribute the book, and with my values as a conservative Catholic and also my stubborn attachment to not wanting anyone to tamper with my book, I didn't think that would be possible for me. And so for a long time, like almost 10 years, I focused my attention elsewhere, specifically on video game development. I published a small game on Steam that did better than my book, but not by much. And I was doing this, YouTube, and trying to make another game in the meantime. But deep down, something about it didn't feel right. I missed writing, and I tried to get back to it once in a while, but I always remembered the defeat I endured at the hands of KDP. At least with games, you could gather wishlists on Steam. On KDP, you just publish your book, and that was that. Also, if you think Steam's 30% cut is bad, for my book, I was making like $2 per sale. It was then that a friend of mine referred me to an author he was aware of by the name of Brian Niemeyer, who had found success through self-publishing. I reached out to him to try to understand how this all worked. The conversations we had over the next few months, plus a bunch of additional research, not to mention everything I learned about in the meantime about game marketing, led me to realize that I had gone about my book all wrong. My intuition about Steam wishlists was kind of correct. Whenever you launch anything online, you need to build hype and create an event, or a moment of excitement when whatever your product is drops, and incentivize people to show up early. That in turn sets the groundwork for your best chances at actually getting the funding for your project, whether it's a book or a game or whatever else. It turns out that a great service that kind of has all this built in already actually exists. Obviously, it's Kickstarter. So with newfound hope that maybe writing was feasible, I set out to write a new book. I was surprised how fast I was able to finish the first draft. It only took me a little over a month. I was hoping to launch that book's Kickstarter in December, but here's what I didn't know. December is the worst possible month to do a Kickstarter. Obviously, people are focusing on Christmas, so that plan kind of died. But there was another option. That book I wrote years ago, the book that the few people who actually got really loved, the book that never got a proper launch because I had no idea what I was doing. If I aimed for a smaller funding goal with that book, that could be my debut. I got to work right away. I obviously couldn't just relaunch the book as is. The plan was to go through the entire book with a fine-tooth comb, overhaul it, and crowdfund a special edition deluxe hardcover. I would definitely need new cover art, especially since my original cover was a cheap 3D render and has been outdated for years. I also learned a lot about writing since then. Brian agreed to be my editor, but before he looked at it, I needed to sift through it myself. I mentioned that when I first wrote it, I didn't do much outlining. This isn't normally a good strategy, but as I reread my book, I was surprised with how well it worked thanks to having originally had a really clear idea in mind for the story I wanted to tell. But other than tightening the wording up here and there, and trimming some scenes that went on for too long, there was one key change I really needed to make. When you write a story, there are a few important things to keep in mind to make sure it works. Most fundamentally, you need to know what the story is about. Obviously, but more specifically, what's the question you're exploring? In my book, though the core idea is the heist and the dragon slaying, The heart of the story is diving into the mind of a character who lost his sense of hope, and explore what it would take for a man like that to regain meaning, if it's even possible. I decided to contrast him against a cast of characters who are all very driven for a variety of motivations. The progression of his character arc was solid, but the thing that I really needed to tighten was the ending, which I won't spoil, but in my original version it focused on the wrong question. As I was revising the book, I noticed a glaring missed opportunity that once I brought in, made the ending way more satisfying and laser focused. After completing my revision, I sent the book off to Brian for a professional edit. In the meantime, I needed to get a new cover for the new deluxe hardcover version. Here's what I settled on. The paperback has this cover from Fiverr. I actually ordered 3 covers there, and to be honest, this is the only one that turned out well. However, the real deal here is the hardcover artwork. This cover was created by local artist Brooke Strauss. She and her husband Mike create tabletop role-playing game adventure modules together, and we playtested some of them. They're excellent, and you should check them out. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and this hardcover version of the book is only going to be available through the Kickstarter campaign for its duration. While Brian edited the rest of the book, I set up as much of the Kickstarter campaign as I could. When Brian got back to me, I was super impressed with just how much he tightened and fixed. He also pointed out a few minor issues in the plot that both myself and all my initial readers missed. With that done, I'm proud to say that as it stands, the book is the best version of itself that it could possibly be. With that, I was finally ready to launch the Kickstarter. But there was one more thing. Something I had my doubts about, but that I really wished could be possible. Something a little ambitious, but if I could make it work, it would be so amazing to make happen. And that brings us to where we are today. The Kickstarter campaign for the deluxe hardcover of the Dragon Slayers is ready to go. If this book interests you, please go check out the campaign and click notify me on launch, and if the campaign is already live by the time you're watching this, check out the reward tiers and see which one speaks to you. So what about that thing that I wanted to make happen but was uncertain about? Well, I've decided that if this campaign does super well and blows past all its stretch goals, everybody who backs gets a free audiobook narrated by my talented friend Greg Tobin.
A disillusioned bounty hunter stakes it all on one last job: to slay a tyrannical dragon and end its monstrous rule. But with the threat of dragonfire, any ally could turn traitor. Follow the Kickstarter campaign and get the free preview chapter now.
After years of the Dragon Slayers sitting quietly in obscurity, I'm super excited to deliver the new and improved deluxe hardcover edition to you, and really hope that we can get the audiobook in there too. If you want to help make this happen, please follow or back the campaign below. I know you're going to love this story. Thanks so much for watching, and God bless.